I just wanted to touch on this. I know I made a reel about this and I'll actually like play the reel and then we can discuss further. But before I play the reel, this is a quote from Demna talking about when he saw the Gucci archives in Florence for the first time as he prepared for his Kering presentation. He said, I thought, this is a dream I didn't even dare to dream. Because all those elements are there. I just have to protect them and modernize the idea of the codes. It's like you're a chef and you cook. At Balenciaga, I was telling Kering I'm a chef, but all I have is a potato and an onion. At Gucci, the amount of ingredients, it's like a playground. I have everything. So I don't have to focus on inventing or trying to put my DNA into the brand to become a business as well. So that was obviously a very controversial statement because it's almost like him indirectly saying that he didn't have freedom to do what he really wanted to do at Balenciaga. That's one way to see it. I think another way of seeing it is that the Gucci archive has more variety. So the Balenciaga archive, if you're looking at like Cristobal Balenciaga himself, has less variety than the Gucci archive. So some people were arguing that actually what he means is just that it's easier, his job is easier at Gucci because there's more variety and there isn't like, like Gucci can be anything. So he doesn't have to put a strong DNA. He can do like Tom Ford with Demna or like Michela with Demna, which is kind of what he's been doing anyway. Whereas like at Balenciaga, he almost felt like he had to create his own DNA, right? Which he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to. No one forced him. He chose to do that. So I just thought it was a bit of a strange thing to say coming from him. It's very, very, very odd. A very, very odd thing to say, to be honest. But let me play what I said about it on Instagram. So we have to talk about this statement from Demna about his time at Balenciaga because this is actually insane. So he said, at Balenciaga, I was telling Kering I'm a chef, but all I have is a potato and an onion. At Gucci, the amount of ingredients, it's like a playground. I have everything. So I don't have to focus on inventing or trying to put my DNA into the brand to become a business as well. First of all, I do think it's actually insane for Demna to imply that he didn't have enough resources at Balenciaga. This person in my Discord put it the best. He moved from a 2 Michelin star restaurant to a 3 star and he's talking like he was working at McDonald's. That is quite accurate. That being said, in many regards, he's actually correct. Gucci makes significantly more money than Balenciaga, so you can only imagine the budgets are bigger for everything, the resources are more, and maybe he's just happy to see this amount of resources be at his disposal, and that's kind of what he was talking about. I also think it's very loaded for him to say that at Gucci there's more to work with, so it doesn't feel like he has to create complete design signatures. I don't know if I agree with that because at the end of the day, we've only seen one collection from Demna at Gucci, but there are heavy references from Tom Ford, for example, with the unbuttoned shirts, the Alessandro Michele elements like the belt, the Tom Ford leather jacket, pussy bow blouses that we associate with Alessandro Michele, horsebit heels that are once again a reference to Tom Ford. I think you get the point. And so what he's doing at Gucci is not that different in principle to what he was doing at Balenciaga. At Balenciaga, he was taking very common Balenciaga shapes, like a cocoon shape, and transporting that into the realm of parka jackets and puffer jackets. He would use Balenciaga shapes, but then kind of change the fabrics and ask the question, why can't denim be couture? Considering that when haute couture was in its heyday in the 20th century, people actually had places that they could wear that stuff to. Nowadays, we wear jeans a lot. We wear puffer jackets. We wear parka jackets. So it's looking at how can we modernize this and make it sort of this modern day couture in a way. Balenciaga had endless budgets. Let's be honest. The shows were huge. Loads of money was spent on the shows. I mean, look at the crazy sets, the campaigns, the people they had in the campaigns, the different films that they made, the licenses that they got to create certain things. They had insane budgets at Balenciaga. And so considering all of this, if Demna is truly saying that at Balenciaga all he had was a potato and an onion, while at Gucci has all the ingredients a chef could ever need, I'm looking forward to this collection in February. So we not me saying I'm looking forward to the collection, considering he's saying all I had was an onion. And yeah, let me see what you guys are saying. At the very least, he could have said he had scallions and steak. Even the analogy of vegetables he's using doesn't even fit what he had handed over to him over there. Yeah, he's saying at Balenciaga it was a balancing act of building the brand while making new stuff. But do you know what's funny though? So why I don't, I was just playing devil's advocate, like arguing for two sides. I just don't agree with what he said, to be honest, if I'm giving my own opinion, because it's like, at the end of the day, as a designer, you have to create something new. So if all he does at Gucci is just keep referencing Michele and Tom Ford, which is kind of what he did with his like first collection, which is not really his first collection, whatever, people are eventually going to be like, bro, you're just copying the archives. Like, why are you even here? That's what people will say. So he still will have to push Gucci forward in some sort of way, or he's going to end up with the same thing that he had at Balenciaga, right? So at Balenciaga, yes, he had to come up with his own ideas, but he was still using the Balenciaga silhouettes. He was still using, Balenciaga ideas. So he's doing the same thing at Gucci. It's not any different. So for him to say, at one place I only had a potato and an onion, and Gucci, I have all the ingredients. I just don't know truly what he means by that, because it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like everything you did at Balenciaga, you're going to have to do that at Gucci. It might be easier at Gucci because there are more resources and you can just kind of lean into the Tom Ford stuff, but you're doing the same job. You're literally doing the same thing. I try to not read too much into what Demna says, because sometimes he just be saying shit in interviews. I mean, that is true too. We've already talked about how many things Demna says that actually he didn't mean it or don't make sense. So I'll hold my hands up and say you are correct in that regard. Define new. Not like he has to reinvent the wheel, but it's like he has to kind of recreate Demna codes. Recreate Gucci codes in a Demna way, whether that's the horsebit loaf or, talking about saddlery or, because Gucci himself was a busboy at the Savoy Hotel. So maybe, kind of doing research into what were people wearing at the Savoy back then. There's different ways he can like reinvent the wheel without having to create something entirely new. What I mean by new is more like fresh is a better word. Like something we haven't seen at Gucci before. Not necessarily something we haven't seen at all, but just through the Demna lens, right? He's still going to have to do that at Gucci, or people just won't care. Balenciaga was also making waves in that space before he arrived. It wasn't as if he took over a nobody. I remember the arena sneakers having a huge moment about 15 years ago. Yeah, I mean, Nicolas Ghesquière, the city bag is Nicolas Ghesquière, the arenas is Nicolas Ghesquière, the Balenciaga runners, the pointy ones, is Nicolas Ghesquière. Like Nicolas Ghesquière, we can talk about the amazing things that he did at Balenciaga, but then we can just talk about the products that actually flew off the shelves. There were loads. So yeah, this idea that, because I know a lot of Demna stands are like, Demna made Balenciaga, and it literally gives me like a headache when people say that. But yeah, that's what I think about that. But yeah, that's the story about Demna and just my thoughts on what he said that I wanted to touch on briefly. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.